You love nursing, but your knees, your back, or honestly your soul can't do 12-hour shifts on your feet forever. If you've ever quietly wondered, is there a version of this career that doesn't require bedside stamina? The answer is yes, and today I'm mapping it out for you. Welcome back to Nursing Matters. I'm Christina, and non-clinical nursing isn't leaving the profession. It's expanding what being a nurse actually means. Let's walk the map together. So health systems are creating more non-bedside RN roles than ever, driven by growth in utilization review, care coordination, telehealth triage, quality and safety, informatics, clinical documentation integrity. A lot of this ties back to value-based care models where systems need RNs translating clinical judgment into data and workflows. Work that just didn't exist at this scale a decade ago. So the door into non-clinical nursing is wider now than it's ever been. It's also more competitive for the most visible roles like case management, so that's worth knowing going in. It's also worth noting that a lot of these non-clinical roles are increasingly remote or hybrid, which has genuinely widened the geographic pool of who's competing for them. A case management role at a hospital across the country might now be open to you as a remote candidate, which is great for options, but it also means you're not just competing with local nursing pools anymore. Your application needs to work a little harder for you to stand out. There's also growing acknowledgement across the industry that non-clinical roles require their own distinct onboarding and skill building, rather than assuming clinical competence alone translates automatically. Some organizations have started building specific transition programs to help bedside nurses successfully move into these roles, recognizing that the skill gap, particularly around data systems and cross-departmental communication, is real and it's worth supporting deliberately. So I recently coached a nurse, we're going to call her Teresa, who spent almost 15 years at the bedside in med-surg before her body just couldn't sustain the 12-hour shifts anymore. She assumed her only option was to leave nursing entirely, which genuinely broke her heart. We spent time mapping her actual interests against the 6 buckets we're about to walk through, and it turned out her years of quietly being the one everyone asked about insurance authorizations and discharge planning had already built exactly the skill set for utilization review. She did not need a new degree. She needed to see that the expertise she already had was a legitimate, well-paying, non-bedside career in its own right. She's 2 years into that role now and tells me she wishes she'd known the map existed a decade earlier. The thing Teresa said that really stayed with me was how much grief she carried in that transition period, even though the outcome was ultimately so positive. She described feeling like she was giving up on real nursing for months before she started this new role. And it actually took being in the utilization review position, seeing how much her clinical judgment mattered every single day to fully believe that this was still nursing, just expressed differently. If you're feeling the same grief about a potential pivot, know that it's a normal part of this transition, not a sign that you're making the wrong choice. So let's actually categorize this so it's not just an overwhelming list. We're going to break it down into buckets. Bucket 1 is care coordination, case management, utilization review, discharge planning, and transitional care. Now, all of these lean heavily on your clinical judgment and communication, and it's often the most natural first pivot because the work still feels recognizably like nursing, just without the direct bedside tasks. Bucket 2, education and training. So we're talking about clinical educators, nurse residency coordinators, simulation lab instructors. If you've ever precepted and loved watching a new nurse's confidence click into place, this bucket deserves a serious look. Usually rewards strong bedside tenure and a real knack for explaining things clearly. Bucket 3, quality, safety, and compliance. Infection prevention, quality improvement, risk management. This is for detail-oriented, data-heavy work, and it tends to appeal to nurses who genuinely enjoyed the analytical side of nursing more than the emotional side. No judgment from me either way. Bucket 4, informatics and technology. So this is your clinical informatics specialists, EMR analysts, super users who move into build and training roles. If you were the nurse everyone on the unit asked to fix the computer or explain the new charting workflow, yeah, this bucket might already be calling your name. Bucket 5, telehealth and remote nursing. Triage lines, remote patient monitoring, virtual visits. This has grown a ton and offers something rare in nursing: genuine schedule flexibility, and in a lot of cases, the ability to work from home. Bucket 6, industry and corporate roles. Think pharma or device company clinical liaisons, medical writing, healthcare consulting, insurance case review. These pay well and use your clinical credibility in a totally different context, but they usually require the most deliberate networking to break into, since they're a lot less visible from inside of a hospital. Now let me add a 7th, smaller bucket that's very easy to overlook, and that's professional association and advocacy work. State Nurses Association, specialty organizations, and healthcare nonprofits sometimes hire RNs directly for policy, education, or member-facing roles. It's a smaller job market, but it's a genuinely meaningful pivot for nurses who care deeply about the profession itself and not just direct patient care. So here's how you actually move on this. Pick one bucket, not all 7. Then find someone already doing that specific role. LinkedIn is genuinely great for this, and ask for 20 minutes to understand how they got there. Almost everyone says yes to a short, specific, respectful ask like that. Then figure out what gap stands between you and that role and close it deliberately over the next 6 to 12 months, instead of waiting for some perfect moment that never actually arrives on its own. Now let's also talk about how to handle the interview conversation around why you're leaving bedside, since it comes up in nearly every non-clinical interview. You're going to want to frame it in terms of what you're moving towards, not just what you're moving away from. For example, I'm drawn to the analytical and coordination side of care, lands better than I just couldn't handle the physical demands anymore. Even if both are true, because it keeps the focus on your genuine interest in the new role rather than framing the move as an escape. One more practical note here. A lot of these pivots benefit from a short trial period before you fully commit, if your facility allows for it. A temporary rotation, a project assignment, or shadowing someone in the target role for a shift or two can confirm your interest before you formally apply. The same low-risk testing approach that worked for Teresa's eventual transition. So it's also worth building a short, specific narrative connecting your bedside years to the new role before you ever walk into an interview, rather than leaving the hiring manager to draw that connection themselves. A clear, rehearsed sentence like, "My 15 years managing complex med-surg assignments taught me exactly the prioritization and communication skills this role demands." That does more work in an interview than simply listing your years of experience and hoping the relevance there is obvious. And give yourself permission to grieve the bedside identity a little, the way Teresa did. if that's part of your experience. Nursing identity often gets tightly wound up with direct patient contact, and stepping away from that, even for genuinely good reasons, can feel like a real loss worth acknowledging rather than pushing past too quickly. Now let's talk about some common mistakes to avoid in this process. Mistake number 1, assuming you need an entirely new degree before you can even explore a non-clinical pivot. Many of these roles value your existing clinical license and experience heavily, and a certificate or targeted CEU track is often sufficient rather than a full new degree. Mistake number 2, applying broadly across all 7 buckets at once rather than focusing. Scattered applications with no clear narrative read as unfocused to hiring managers, compared to a candidate with a clear, specific story about why this particular pivot makes sense. Mistake number 3, underselling your bedside experience in a non-clinical application. Your years of direct patient care are exactly what make you valuable in these roles. Don't minimize that experience just because the new role isn't bedside. Let's move on to the listener mailbag. Someone asked, will I take a pay cut moving non-clinical? The answer to that is it genuinely varies. Some non-clinical roles, especially entry-level care coordination, can pay somewhat less than an experienced bedside nurse with differentials. Others, particularly informatics, industry roles, and senior case management, can pay a lot more. This is exactly why pulling real numbers before you commit to a direction matters so much. Don't assume either way without checking. Another listener asked, how do I deal with feeling like I'm not a real nurse anymore after leaving the bedside? So the feeling is more common than you'd think, and it usually fades as you settle into the new role and see your clinical judgment showing up in a different form. Connecting with other nurses who have made similar transitions through a community or professional group can help normalize that adjustment period faster than trying to work through it alone. Our nursing education directory on rnnet.org includes programs and certificate paths for exactly these pivots: informatics, case management, nurse education, and more. It's organized by state so you can find something realistic for your actual life. Check it out at rnnet.org. Let's talk about your next take action step for this week. So I want you to pick your bucket, just one, then find one real person on LinkedIn doing that job and send a short, respectful message asking for 20 minutes of their time. Write down 2 questions you'd actually want answered before you send it so the conversation has a real direction. All right, you guys, that's it for today's episode. If this message resonated with you, be sure to like and subscribe wherever you stream your favorite content. If you know of a nurse whose body or heart can't do the bedside forever, please share this with them. As always, I appreciate you listening today, and remember, keep going because nursing matters.